Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're really well on this Monday afternoon. My name is Jed Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Low Season Traveller, and we're delighted to have you with us today for this latest episode of Low Season Traveller Insider Guides, where we're focusing on low season in Africa. So many of you might have joined us in previous weeks where we've covered South Africa. We've been to Botswana, we've been to Namibia, and this week it's the turn of Zimbabwe. So while we're waiting for everybody to join us, I'd like to first of all give you a little bit of an overview as to what we're going to be discussing today in Zimbabwe and what we're going to be showing you and what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to show you a very, very short video which gives a really, really good introduction to this wonderful, wonderful destination. I hope you enjoy this.
Rise like fire into a new world. Dare to dream.
So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a flavour as to what we're going to be talking about today. I'd like at this point to play a very special thanks to our very good friends at Africa Rome, who very kindly sponsored this entire series, actually, not just today's episode. Africa Rome is a renowned African tour operator offering travellers access to some of the continent's most exclusive and unique experiences, from unattainable culinary opportunities to behind-the-scenes access to art and culture, adrenaline-based adventures, access to the top safari guides, or the majesty of the natural wonders. The team at Africa Rome tailors every trip to exceed their guests' requests. And we are absolutely delighted today to be joined by Rue Oosthuizen. I hope I'm getting that right, Rue. She's in the green room listening to me right now. Rue's love of travel started at a very young age, despite growing up in apartheid South Africa. Obligatory annual trips to the Kruger National Park with her family started a lifelong passion for learning about the wildlife on the African continent. In the early 90s, an opportunity arose to travel to Zimbabwe. Life was never the same after that epic trip. A deep love of exploration and discovery was cemented, and it was crystal clear which direction Rue's career would take. Rue is an explorer and an adventurer, an alpine enthusiast, a foodie, an art lover, a Land Rover fan, and she's also the founder and CEO of Africa Roam. And we're also joined, of course, by our regular guest, Warren Pearson, who is brought to us proudly from Africa Roam. Warren, for those of you that don't know him, if this is your first time joining us, he is a specialist naturalist guide. He's an explorer, a photographer, a fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, no less, and he's done projects with Animal Planet and National Geographic, and of course, Low Season Traveller right now. Let's bring them in. Guys, you should be coming in 3, 2, 1. And there you go. How are you? Can we see you just now? Let me hand that out of the way. There we go. How are you doing, guys?
Get closer to each other. Wow.
Very well, thanks, and yourself?
Oh, very good indeed. Great to have you with us. Just for all of our listeners that are just tuning in, and maybe some who haven't tuned in before, let us know where you are speaking to us from today.
Speaking from where I live, which is out in the Overberg region of the Western Cape of South Africa. Probably most people understand Hermanus or know of Hermanus being one of the best whale watching areas in probably the world. So yeah, I'm not too far from that. I live on a wine farm. And yeah, it's a beautiful sunny day outside right now. So I'm quite upset we should be doing this outside and not inside my office.
Hey, you know, you could do that from outside if you wanted to. I never specified you had to be inside. Actually, that would be pretty cool. Maybe we should think about that for next week. Maybe we could do it outside if the weather allows us to. I guess it's pretty cold there as well, eh?
Well, no, we're sitting at about sort of 20 odd degrees centigrade right now.
Nice.
It's a little bit chilly in the office. That's why I've got this on.
Yeah.
But no, the day is beautiful outside.
Very good, very good. And how are you doing, Rue? Great to have you with us again.
Thank you so much. It's delightful to be with you this afternoon. Yes, Warren and I are super enthusiastic and excited about this trip that we're taking to Zimbabwe this afternoon.
Oh, well, I'm really looking forward to it as well. I mean, yet again, I feel like I say this every week, but it's a destination that I have got no first-hand experience of. So as a result, I'm really excited as well to learn more about it. And we've got some great images as well to accompany what we're going to be talking about. But I guess we should really go straight in with a little bit of an overview. Let me get the right slides. Oops. We'll go through, if you could both sort of talk us through a little bit of an overview of Zimbabwe, I guess, to get us started off, if you wouldn't mind.
No problem, Jed. I mean, I think the map speaks for itself where exactly it's situated. So it's classified in Southern Africa as opposed to Eastern Africa. Southern Africa, it's a landlocked country, or Zimbabwe is a landlocked country. Mozambique on its eastern side, Botswana on its western side, Zambia to its north, and South Africa to its south. It's a fairly large country. I mean, I think there we go. You'll have a look in relation to the UK, to Europe, and probably it's very similar size to France.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
an exceptionally large country, and you know, a lot of people don't understand how big Africa is.
Yeah.
I think maps like this for me put it all into perspective.
It's one of those frustrations, isn't it, with the two-dimensional maps of the world that we're used to and we were sort of brought up with at school. They always do a disservice to Africa, to the whole continent, because they don't accurately depict the size of the continent compared to the rest of the world, do they? Well,
they don't, because Africa is so large that nothing else will fit into the map if you had to put everything out there. So they have to shrink a lot of continents. I mean, if you look at Russia, for example, is enlarged slightly. Greenland is enlarged. Africa is constricted a bit, made a lot smaller. just to sort of try and get every country appropriately into a flat map on a piece of paper.
Yeah, but that's incredible. The size of Zimbabwe being, yeah, like you say, roughly the equivalent to France as well.
So we, sorry, Jay, to explain to people why you would want to go to Zimbabwe. You know, I think a lot of people only know the Victoria Falls. That's the connection or the information about the country. I think, as we will again learn today, the history is fascinating. And then also the natural beauty. It's a place where anyone that's into adventure travel can absolutely have the time of their lives. People that's interested in engineering, the Kariba Dam and the whole construction of that dam is a fascinating aspect as well. So I think it is, a lot of people actually add Victoria Falls onto an itinerary that is usually part of a Botswana trip or South Africa trip. However, we are very much able to sell an entire stay, at least 2 weeks, if not longer, for people that are interested in exploring this fascinating country.
Absolutely. So give us a little bit of a background. You've shown us this. You've very kindly sent in this map here and these photographs. Talk us through these, if you wouldn't mind, Ruth.
Yes, I think Warren and I are both huge fans of Dr. David Livingstone, and we will talk more about him later as we venture to Victoria Falls, which we will talk about at the latter end of this program. But this man, you know, he's a fascinating person, and he never intended actually to come to Africa. I don't know how much you know about his history. He's Scottish, he's from Blantyre, and he was moved by Christianity, a deep Christian faith, and doing good. And he decided to become a medical missionary because the British government encouraged them to actually try and go to China to do missionary work in China. Mm-hmm. But opium wars that broke out, and his plans to go to China was unfortunately for China was disrupted. Unfortunately for us here in Africa, it was a go-ahead. And so what happened was he got on a ship, came to Cape Town, landed in 1841, and then he started moving into the interior. And that map shows his exploration of the. He was the first European to see the Victoria Falls. He's the first European to explore the African continent in its width. So from the west, Luanda, there at the top, you can see the route he took. And of course, the top photo on the right, that is the famous Dr. Livingstone, I presume, quote that we all know, where the journalist, the correspondent for the New York Herald, met Dr. Livingstone in Tanzania after it was reported that he had died, and they started trying, to find him. And that's where Henry Morton Stanley met David Livingstone. And sadly, he died about 2 years after that. He died. But fascinating man, and we have a lot of gratitude for his bravery and for what he's done on this continent. I think he brought Africa to the Western world and showed the world a different face, of Africa. Yep,
love that. And in this next photo here, this is a different sort of map of Zimbabwe, but this is one which, again, maybe sort of talk us through on the scale of this. So this is showing us the different sort of national parks, but I suppose just to give our audience a little bit of a clearer sort of picture on this, driving from, I don't know, Harare to Hwange National Park, what kind of distances are we talking about here?
If you had to drive, Jed, from Harare through to Hwange, you're probably looking at a full day's drive, if not a little bit more. Okay. the roads, the minute you get, the roads are generally pretty well if you stick to the main arterial road. So if you go from the very south there, from coming up from South Africa, and you're driving up to Harare, or you're driving slightly west towards Bulawayo and up to Victoria Falls, those roads are pretty good. But cutting across the country, some of the roads can be quite horrendous in some places, and most of the time you probably find you're driving on the actual shoulder of the road and actually not on the road itself. But it's a big country, and it does take you a good long time to get around. And the other thing about traveling around Zimbabwe, if you're driving, is you got to be aware of livestock and wild animals. So you can't drive as fast as you would expect to drive in Europe, for example. And if you do, you are being a little bit silly. You just got to take it slower. But it's a big country, and the reason that map is there, I like people to have a look at a map. It just orientates you more with. I think someone's asking if we can put a full screen of the map there, Jed.
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep, good point.
So yeah, if you have a look at that map, and I'm just going to very quickly start, and we can work in a clockwise fashion. So we'll start from Harare, being the capital, and move down sort of the eastern side of Zimbabwe. And that eastern side is known as the Eastern Highlands, where Nyanga National Park is, and Mutare. That part, I mean, we're going to get more into this in detail as we go through, but that is probably scenically one of the most beautiful parts of Zimbabwe. It reminds me of Scotland whenever I go there. And I'm originally from Scotland, my family is. And it's a stunning part of the country, and it's part of the Rift Valley that actually comes down from East Africa, that sort of goes all the way down into South Africa. If you head further south, you head towards Chipinge there and Gonarezu National Park, and that also I'm going to get into later, but that to me is the hidden gem of Zimbabwe. It really is. And there's a few other areas around there just to the north of Gonarezu called Save Valley and Malelengwe, which for me personally, from a wilderness wildlife perspective, just it blows my mind every single time I'm there. If you head slightly inland there, you get to Great Zimbabwe, some of the oldest structural ruins in southern Africa. Once again, we'll get into that. And then if I go more to the western side there, so if you scroll to the left there a bit, you'll see Matobo Hills. A lot of historical information about Matobo Hills, not just the rocks themselves, which are over 2 billion years old, but to do with Cecil John Rhodes and a few other gentlemen from sort of the Empire of England when they were looking after then Rhodesia. And then if we head up towards Wangi National Park on the western side, that's the largest national park in Zimbabwe. And then that is all linked north of that, all the way with Kazuma Pan, all the way up to Zambezi National Park, and that's where you find Victoria Falls. Yeah. So up in the very top left corner there, the northwestern corner. And then if you go sort of across, you get your Zera National Park, Matutsudona National Park, which borders onto Lake Kariba. And then we head into Monopools and Monopools National Park. So it's just some of the areas we're going to be talking about this afternoon. And I think it's just there's so much to talk about Zimbabwe. It's I think we're going to worry about our time again.
Yeah, it's always the way. There's only so much you can fit in 1 hour. Just at the very outset, when we talk about the low season months for Zimbabwe, what's the low season for Zimbabwe? Just so we sort of orientate ourselves on the times of the year.
Do you want to answer?
Yeah, that's the easy one. I'll do that one. Well, it's again in the rainy season, and it's the start of the rainy season in Southern Africa. It's October, and then going into April. Yep.
Okay. And presumably, everything is still open and everything is still there, and tours still run and safaris still run, and
yes, actually,
there are a few places that you got to be careful of that do close, particularly during the height of the rains, which is typically January, February. But it's always worthwhile checking ahead of time. So if you are booking a trip, Just make sure if you want to go into a specific area, let's make sure what lodges have closed, what areas are open. Yeah, but for the most part, most of them will stay open.
Yeah, and it's all, sorry, Jade. It's the best time to see the Victoria Falls in February, March, April, May.
I guess it's when there's the most water coming through, right?
Yes.
Very good. I suppose, I mean, look, it's another reason why I think it's probably quite important this is a good plug here for Africa Rome, of course, and quite rightly and deservedly so. But this is why, during the low seasons, it's important to, to book through an established tour operator stroke DMC, because they can help advise you and guide you on how to plan that low season trip to make sure that everything is open, and also to inform you if anything is closed before you do book, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love that. So with that, let's get straight on to, so you guys have very kindly given us a top 10 experiences for Zimbabwe. Needless to say, we didn't need to just stop at 10, but we only have an hour, so I think 10 is probably quite a good number. So if you'd like to talk us through, the first one is Lake Kariba. So tell us about Lake Kariba and why that is a special experience in Zimbabwe.
I think, Jed, first and foremost, these are not in any particular order. So it's just 10 highlights that I think, if you want to, as I said, you could, as Ru said, you could spend 2 weeks traveling around Zimbabwe and literally seeing all these destinations. So they are just some of the highlights that I think, if you're going to come, this is where you need to try and spend your time and have a look at. Getting on to Lake Kariba, to me, it's one of the most underestimated destinations, in Zimbabwe. The Zambezi River, which is the 4th largest river in Africa, creates the northern border between Zimbabwe and Zambia to its neighbor to its north. And Lake Kariba was dammed in the late 1950s for hydroelectricity. But it's created, I mean, it's sad, there was a lot of negative because a lot of animals had to be rescued during an operation called Operation Noah. Animals being rescued off islands, being relocated, but not just the animals, people as well. There were huge communities in that area that had to be relocated. So there was a negative side to the dam's creation. It is one of the largest man-made dams in Africa, if not maybe the world. I think maybe the Three Gorges Dam in China might be bigger. But it's just on 300 kilometers long, just to give you an idea. Wow. It's huge. But it has created a beautiful wilderness area, particularly on the Zimbabwean side. I'm going to actually let Ru take over because she's quite passionate about Lake Kariba and what's on offer there.
Yeah.
So Lake Kariba was constructed by Italian civil engineering from Milan. And they started in 1955. And as Warren has mentioned, it did create a lot of turmoil for the local Tonga people that lived there. They had to remove thousands, tens of thousands of people had to be relocated because the land that they were living on was being flooded. And so we try to now see the dam for its positive impacts in the community. And of course, one of the positive things that it has created is a lot of tourism jobs around this lake and on the lake, because one of the most favorite things that you do is you go on a houseboat. And it's an extremely tranquil experience. You can choose if you want to go completely private and have your family with you and go fishing on a fishing trip. I think it's big, massive tiger fish that you can fish on the Zambezi or on the Kariba Lake. And you can also do a trip where you do an overnight on a houseboat to go from Kariba onto the mainland and then travel to Victoria Falls if you want to do a road trip.
Wow.
The lodge around Lake Kariba, there's not that many, but they are extremely well serviced. You can also fly into Kariba if you don't want to do the long drive. And it's definitely a family. It's very good for families to go on holiday there. I would say that when I was privileged to go to Zimbabwe for the first time, we were our family, and we did a trip on Lake Kariba, and it's just a wonderful time to spend together and to explore. You can jump in the lake at some stage if you don't see any hippos or crocs.
I was going to say that'd be brave, wouldn't it?
Swim, and you can just experience the amazing bird life that the region offers.
One of the most amazing things, Jed, for me is that, and this is an experience that happened to me every time I go there. I tell people, take your watches off, put your cell phones off, and just sort of let the days come. And I always speak to the captain of a houseboat and say, just you come to me and let me know when we're going to be departing. Yeah. And I mean, this went back a long time to one of my first trips there, that we actually went to go spend Christmas over or on the houseboat. We actually realized when we climbed off the houseboat, we actually celebrated Christmas on the 26th and not on the 25th. Time just went away with us. We didn't know. There's nothing to do. You read your books, you bird, you swim in a cage at the back of the houseboat because of the crocodiles and the hippos. Yeah, it's so tranquil. It's so peaceful. It's definitely if you want a relaxing holiday, there's nothing better.
I love it. And that's the kind of views that you get, I guess.
You will not see sunsets like this anywhere else in the world. It is truly mind-blowingly beautiful. Awesome.
The next one is Matusadona.
So this is a national park. It's been through a lot of ups and downs over the years. It's best to go in September, November, just before the rains do come in, because a lot of the lodges here do close during the height of the rains. But it's an area, if people remember the map of Zimbabwe, it borders the southern section of Lake Kariba. And it's an enchanting landscape. It's got these flat plains, rugged mountains that come up from the escarpment range. The wildlife populations are massively strong. Big elephant herds, big buffalo herds. There's a massive, strong conservation effort that has now gone into it. There's a non-government organization called African Parks that have taken over the management of it now recently. And they're just doing, this is for another talk, but they're doing phenomenal work all throughout Africa. So I'm very happy to see them there. It's if you want to experience Lake Kariba, but also want to experience a lot of the land-based, so the vehicle safaris, the walking, this is definitely a place to go to. So yeah, not many people do get to go there. Once again, accessibility has not been the easiest. But tourism's it's reviving. It's really, people are making plans now, and companies and organizations are making plans to get people there and tourists there.
We're looking at these these sort of some of the top experiences here. And it just sort of makes me think, you're sort of saying, there's not a lot of people that have made it to these kind of places. What is it mainly, in the past, has tourism mainly been centered around Vic Falls and, one other park or something? Or what's tourism been centered around traditionally in the past? And why is it that people haven't made it to these just incredible places?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Jed. It has been focused primarily, number one, I would say, on Victoria Falls. And then Wangi National Park, which is just south of Victoria Falls. That's a nice, if I can say, a closer destination for people coming from Botswana or people from Victoria Falls. It's maybe an hour, 2-hour drive south, depending on the camp that you're going from Victoria Falls. So it's pretty easy to get to. And then the other one would be Mana Pools, which we'll talk about a bit later as well. Otherwise, the rest of Zimbabwe has mostly been forgotten about from a tourist perspective. It's very sad. It's there's so much to offer.
Yes, but we have to remember that there's been a lot of political upheaval in this country. So it has definitely influenced the way that people see the country and how they respond, to going there.
But what a great opportunity. Low season travelers generally, they tend to be the more adventurous ones, and the ones that actually in many ways they pioneer from a tourism point of view. They pioneer and help open up the destination for the others then to follow. And it just seems at the outset that Zimbabwe is one of those great destinations for low season travelers, you know, to come here before all the crowds do get here, and really enjoy it at a time when it's, you know, when it's relatively quiet and calm and relaxed and almost not undiscovered, but, you know, undiscovered certainly by mass tourism. What a great opportunity.
Yes,
Definitely.
And Warren said last week when we introduced Zimbabwe, he said that you wouldn't find a kinder people in Africa, and it is certainly true. It's the most wonderful, kind people that you meet when you travel in the country, and according, you know, in my personal opinion, I feel it's a pretty safe place to actually self-drive trip.
I would say it's a very safe place, to be honest with you. You know, a lot of people think it's a dangerous place because they see the negative news, but you know, it's definitely not dangerous to me. It's you know, if you have your wits about you like you would travel anywhere in the world, you know, just be sensible. But I always say there's a saying that goes when it comes to the people of Zimbabwe, and this is what I really love about Zimbabwe, and it says the only arms that you'll be greeted with are open ones. You know, and that is true. I'll still to this day get completely amazed with the troubles that they've gone through, and as a population, as a people, there's always a smile on everyone's face.
Yeah, I love that. It's so often the way, isn't it, when you travel to different destinations around the world, and yes, you know, you can see some of the most incredible landscapes and wildlife and everything else, but frequently when we come back, one of the aspects that we talk about the most and the most enthusiastically is the people that we meet and the locals. And if they're friendly, it just makes so much of a difference, you know, when they're friendly and welcoming, and make you feel at home for those 2 weeks or however long that you're there. It just makes a world of difference, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does.
I'm just going to click us on to Mana Pools National Park, which is the next one I want to talk about. And if you'll excuse me just one moment, I'm just going to have to let our cat in. This is the hellish part of live TV. The cat's locked out. Just let the cat in. But tell us a little bit about Mana Pools.
Mana Pools is scenically, it's stunning. It's a stunningly beautiful wilderness area. It's in a setting, it sits between the Zambezi Escarpment and the Zambezi River, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage site. So, you know, from a wildlife perspective, a wildlife lover, it's raw, it's wild, it's brilliant for walking safaris, it's brilliant for canoeing safaris. It's one of these places that literally around every corner, and if you're a photographer, you bring enough memory cards because you probably will run a lot of space on your cameras. But it's a mix of grassy floodplains, woodlands, riverine forests, you know, close-up encounters with wildlife, wild dogs, for example, elephants, the bird life, the Carmine bee eaters there, the picture that you have on. It just goes on and on and on. You know, and you get these beautiful, massive acacia albida trees, which have a very rich protein apple peel-like pods that the elephants love to eat, and they love to stand up on their back legs and reach up high, reaching these pods. It's one of these areas that I can't say enough about, because it is just the light as you see coming through there in the late afternoon or early morning. It's a yeah. If you're an adventurer, if you like to have raw Africa, if you enjoy really close-up encounters, you know, it's a really special place, and it's looked after. If I can say it, looked after. It survives by its namesake. Actually, Mana, actually in the Shona language, means four, and there's four pools that give the park its name, and these pools are fed by springs that always have water in them. So come wet or dry season, the animals are going to be there. It's a scenically stunning area, and that lower Zambezi Valley onto the river itself is one of probably the most exciting, most memorable experiences I've ever had. I've canoed the lower Zambezi, and we started at Mana Pools. And we canoed for 5 days. We took all our stuff in the canoes with us, and we canoed all the way down to the Mozambican border. You sleep on the sandbanks at night. You don't see a single person, a plane, a train, a boat, nothing else for 5 days. You got to contend with crocodiles. You got to contend with hippos.
Yeah, you dodge that.
But it's proper wilderness, and this is one thing that Zimbabwe. I'm going to mention this again when we get to Gonarezu, because it is Zimbabwe has got real wilderness, and that's what I personally, from a guiding and a nature perspective, love about it.
These kind of, when you're sort of saying there, you can canoe down the Zambezi and you sleep out on the banks. Not just anybody could do that, right? I mean, you would have to have
you need to go through a proper operator.
Yeah.
You'll have to have a guide with you, a river guide, and that is something which I want to actually put as a guide myself. I want to just put a shout out to the Zimbabwean guides, because the Zimbabwean guides are probably some of the best guides and most well-trained guides in Africa. I might get a bit of flack for saying that, but
I second that.
They really are. And I remember the very first time I went on a canoe, and we had a guide called Bono. I was a guide at that time, and I was completely out of my comfort zone. I felt completely at ease with this gentleman, and the way he guided us down this river, the way he handled the situations. We actually had a hippo charge us. It was. They are amazing. They are absolutely amazing. When it comes to walking, understanding animals, animal behavior, you name it. So, if you're going to go do an activity like this, or any activity in Zimbabwe, having a Zimbabwean qualified guide with you it changes your world and your adventure. It really does.
It'd probably make me sleep easier at night as well, if I'm being very honest.
Most definitely.
Tremendous. So let's go on to the next one. Now, the next one is an interesting one, because you sort of tipped me off on this one before, Warren. Chisarira, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Chisarira, yeah.
Chisarira. Now we've only got one photograph of it. So could you explain to me why we've only got one photograph of it, Warren, as well?
So this is a national park, it's roughly 2,000 square kilometers of wild bush. It's about 50 kilometers inland from Lake Kariba, just, if I can say, slightly sort of north and west of center of the country. It's a remote land. It's got springs, it's got seeps, it's got hidden valleys, it's got pockets of lush vegetation. It's got, I almost want to say very little, but pretty much no tourism at all. I mean, unless you're really adventurous. Yeah. There was a lodge that was there. Unfortunately, it has run into quite a bit of disrepair over the years and the turmoil that Zimbabwe has gone through. But it's on the up. And to me, this is a place that people need to just keep a tab on, because it is very remote, and I think the hardest part is getting the infrastructure in there, and getting operators in there to get you there. But it's wild. It is, if you're self-driving around and you don't mind sort of pitching your own tent and camp up somewhere and just exploring it, and if you have a guide with you that you're comfortable with, and you go and explore these valleys and you go and explore the springs, it's just one of these really out-of-the-way areas that I can guarantee you, whether you're in high season or low season, you're not going to see another person there.
Love that. That's going to be like a red rag to a bull for a lot of our audience, I think. And there's plenty of wildlife there, so, you were sort of saying that through recent times, it has sort of, like the lodge that was there has fallen into a bit of disrepair, and it's obviously starting to, to come back a little bit now, or there's still wildlife there. They still have, all of that sort of beauty that you would associate with a national park.
There is. I mean, when we talk about wildlife numbers, it's very difficult. There was a very healthy wildlife population there, and sadly, during the last decade, or a little bit more than a decade of turmoil in Zimbabwe, the wildlife have taken a massive hit from poaching, and with the lack of tourism there, and this is one of the benefits of tourism going into areas, it does protect these areas. Yeah. So there is wildlife there. They're probably going to be very skittish, very shy. To me, if you're looking for a wildlife destination that you want to go see animals, this isn't the place. If you want to go and experience pure wilderness of being in the middle of nowhere and feeling like you're probably the only person on earth, this is the place to go.
I love that. I think that's a really great point, which I'd probably just like to sort of highlight again. And maybe Rue have your thoughts on this as well. But for a lot of our audience, they might not just fully appreciate that by traveling to countries like Zimbabwe and Namibia and Kruger we've featured and Botswana and all of these kind of wonderful places, they are helping to ensure that the wildlife is protected just by their presence there. That's right, isn't it? And that's why it really is so important. If you have a love of this wildlife and you want to see this wildlife protected, it's important for you to be a tourist, to go to these places and put your money into these places, because that will help to preserve this wildlife for future generations.
Yes, when we book accommodation for guests at the lodges that we use, there's always a conservation levy that's included in the cost, and that money goes toward a fund where it's ensured that conservation efforts are managed well, and it is a protection for animals. As you know, in the last few years, we've had an awful poaching issue with rhino. The pangolin is also one of the most, I think it is the most trafficked animal in the world. And so the funds that tourists contribute by booking and visiting these natural places definitely contributes to the greater good of ensuring that we have them for the next generation.
Yeah, so important. The next place that we're going to, you touched on this earlier on, Hwange National Park. So this is, if I recall correctly, right up in the northwest.
So very, very northwest, just south of Victoria Falls. It's the largest national park in Zimbabwe at 15,000 square kilometers. So it's massive. It's huge. It's part of a bigger ecosystem that flows into Botswana. It flows into Namibia, into Zambia. So the park itself is demarcated, but there's no fences or anything around. It's open. Animals get to move. But Hwange is known primarily for its massive herds of elephants and buffalo. It's probably the most visited park in Zimbabwe. And as I said, primarily because it's just 2 to 3 hours south of Victoria Falls. So a very easy drive to get in there. A lot of people do fly in, but for those that want to drive, it's an easy drive.
Yeah.
It has massive diversity there. It's just over 100 species of mammals. There are over 400 species of bird that have been recorded there.
Wow.
It's actually one of the highest animal, as I said, diversities of a park anywhere on the planet. And so researchers get attracted there. It's got healthy wild dog populations. Several lodges and camps, they make the area visitable. There's good operators that have gone in there to make it easy. So you get everything from your very basic camping all the way up to your 5-star luxury lodges. Yeah. And it's a very typical safari destination. So your game drives, your vehicle safaris in the morning, in the evening, you're walking. It's definitely a park I would recommend people to go and see, but don't just stop there. Go and see the rest of the country as well.
Absolutely. And when you're, when we sort of talk about all of these different parks, and you're sort of saying that Hwange is probably, well, it's one of the largest and most diverse. Again, talk to us a little bit about, if we're to compare Hwange with, Kruger or these kind of places, how much of a difference is there between these kind of, again, for the uneducated people on, safaris, what is the main key differences between these kind of parks that you're having in Zimbabwe compared to what you might have in South Africa and some of the other places?
I must be careful how I answer this, because I think that if you look to the very first time safari goer, they're not really going to see a difference or understand a difference between the two. But when you start getting down to sort of the more ecological side of things, the diversity comes in the land and what the land has. So from a vegetation perspective, from how much water is around, how little water is around, it's if you had to go to Kruger, for example, you know, I think we mentioned this before with South Africa when we were talking about South Africa. Kruger National Park's very linear, so very north-south orientated. A lot of the private areas in the southern section or southwestern section of Kruger National Park, they're little small islands, so their ecosystems and their habitats are very similar. And so from a diversity perspective, Wangi, just being the size that it is and the freedom that you have to move around in, offers all of what you could possibly ask for. As I said, you know, you have this free range of movement of animals coming across from Botswana, moving up to Zimbabwe, moving up to Victoria Falls, to the Zambezi River. It's location at the end of the day.
I love that. Okay. One other thing on that, just on the same sort of vibe, really. And I don't know if the national parks are sort of measured by this, but again, for low season travelers who like to avoid the crowds, I think probably any of the destinations that we've been covering haven't got huge numbers of crowds. But when we're talking about the likes of Hwangi, you know, is it a less crowded sort of experience, a national park sometimes compared to some
definitely. It's you know, and this is the thing I love about Zimbabwe, because it's not a well-known destination. It's come high or low season, it's phenomenal. And in the low season, it is green, it is spectacular. The wildflowers are out, the migratory birds are back. And that's what I love about the green season. And it's called the green season purely because of that. The low season equals the green season. It's scenically stunning. Yeah,
you've sold it to me, Warren.
Good.
So next on our list, Matobo National Park. Remind us whereabouts Matobo is located.
Matobo National Park is south of Bulawayo, Jed. If you look at the map that Warren sent out, it's just south of of Bulawayo, which is the second biggest city in Zimbabwe, or town in Zimbabwe. Yeah, this is my personal favorite of the country, and it is a place where you find your soul and you really understand just the most extraordinary peace, again with these beautiful granite koppies that we call it in Southern Africa. It's also the place where Cecil John Rhodes, who had a huge influence in our history, he's buried. He didn't die there, but he died in Cape Town. But he was buried there. It is the oldest national park, I think, in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
I think it was established in 1926, and it is also a very intense protectorate of white and black rhino.
Oh,
so
wow.
We talked about the rhino last week, and I said go tracking on foot.
Yeah.
Also one of those incredible places where you can learn a lot about the history of this area. Yep. And also go on foot and do a walking safari and have the privilege of looking at these beautiful animals with a qualified guide.
That would be incredible. How close, if you're on a walking safari and you're encountering, you know, rhinos like these chaps here, how close do you get, and how close should you get?
Well, you get very close in the sense that you should always be the one that runs the fastest.
Okay,
in the crowd. But actually, sorry, we've got a little a cat situation.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. I've got a cat that's striking away at me down here as well.
Yeah, so you get very close to the rhino because rhino has very poor eyesight. When you look at a rhino, look at their face there on that photograph. You can see how small their eyes are compared to this massive animal. And so you need to just make sure that you are not downwind. That's right. Huh? You upwind from the rhino. No, what is it?
I'm back. Sorry, I had to just take my daughter outside quickly.
What are you supposed to be upwind?
So you want to be downwind of an animal. Rhinos have exceptionally good smell, and as you can see there, their hearing, the ears.
Yeah.
But the two different species of rhino, and I don't know if Ruth covered this, but the two black and white species, which is actually not the correct name. It should be called the square-lipped rhinoceros, which is the one that you've got on the screen there, known as the white rhino. And then the hook-lipped rhinoceros, which is known as the black rhino. We can get into discussion of where those names came from at another time.
Another episode.
But it's, the white rhino is the more placid, relaxed, calm, and you can get surprisingly close to them if you have the wind at your favor and if you're very quiet. A black rhino you treat as a very different animal. I always refer to it as unstable dynamite. You just don't know when it's going to go off. So yeah, a black rhino you're going to treat very differently if you're tracking a black rhino than you would a white rhino. And also their habitat is different. So black rhino love thickets. They love thick bush. Where white rhino typically like a lot more open areas. So it's easier in a way to get white.
Must be incredible though, being on foot and coming across, a beast this huge. This. I don't know. I mean, I suppose day to day, certainly in Europe and around these parts of the world, we don't come across any creatures that are actually that are bigger than us. So to come across something that size, that close up, in its natural environment and habitat, that must be pretty awe-inspiring, stroke petrifying, maybe a little bit.
Well, it is. I mean, if you look at a big white rhino bull, you're looking at roughly around 2 tons of animal.
Wow.
And I call them fat ballerinas because they are so nimble and so agile, and you wouldn't think that this 2-ton animal can move and can pivot so quickly. Yeah. But yes, for me it's a spiritual experience being on foot with such a big animal. Never mind an elephant, but a rhino, a buffalo, even a lion. I mean, you're standing facing a lion and you're looking at a lion. They're big animals when you're standing on foot. And this is one thing I always try and get people to experience when they come to Africa is get out of the vehicle with a guide that's qualified, obviously, and walk, because you really do sense where you fit into this world of ours. And I think this pandemic's teaching us a lot about where we fit in, and just being on foot with these large animals you have this adrenaline pumping through you. It's exciting, it's scary, it's nervous, it's awe-inspiring. It's something that people have to do it. They just have to. Is
it? I mean, like I say, I have sort of, I've been to Kruger once before. For me, it was almost spiritual, actually. When you come across these creatures in the wild, and just the wildlife generally, not necessarily, rhinos per se or anything else, but just being at one with nature. Yeah, I kind of agree with you there, Warren, in that it does remind you of your place in this world. It's a million miles away from Wi-Fi and cable TV and everything else. And it kind of brings you right back to nature. And yeah, I think it is almost spiritual. I mean, do you find that that's what people are looking for when they're on safari? Are they looking to reconnect with that somehow almost spiritual kind of feeling of being at one with nature?
I don't think it's necessarily what they're looking for, but I think it's something that they find.
It finds them.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's for me, it's the biggest leveler out there. And people that I've been fortunate to guide, people from around this world that are they CEOs of massive corporation, Fortune 500 companies, royalty, heads of state, you name it, but put them into this environment and put them on foot with an animal like that around. As I said, it's the greatest leveler. And it's you just, no matter who you are in this world, you realize actually this is where I actually am and not where I should be, kind of thing. So
I think it gives you humility as well, doesn't it?
Completely.
I think of this, when I look at this, I'll make this just a little bit larger. But when I look at scenes like this, you know, it's just the vastness of everything. It makes you feel a little bit small. And, you know, if you kind of think that you're something in this world and you're sort of, you know, getting a little bit cocky, I think this kind of stuff would bring you down to earth a little bit, just make you feel a bit of humility, I reckon.
100%.
Yeah. Love that. I'm conscious of time. We will move onwards to the Eastern Highlands.
So for me, I mean, one of the reasons why I put this in was it reminds me of Scotland. That's, you know, when I drive through there, it's absolutely stunning. The mountain roads wind their way through pine forests, and, you know, you got coffee shops and inns and tinkling streams and picturesque fishing lakes. You got, you know, Iron Age settlements and other archaeological sites that, you know, you can sort of have a look and find, and plenty of bird life. You have a national park, actually a small national park called Chimanimani, which, if you're a trekker and a hiker, it's a dream place to go and trek. Very difficult to get into, but you know, you got these bulbous mountain peaks, you got jagged pinnacles, waterfalls, crystal clear rivers, savanna valleys, stone forests. You know, I could keep going on and on. Yeah. It's just, if you're wanting to escape into nature, and you just like getting away from it all, this to me is a place to go. And there's just so many places to go and explore on the Eastern Highlands.
I love that. It is so similar to, you know, when I was first looking at those photographs, I was thinking, gosh, you could almost be in Scotland or Ireland or England or Wales, you know, that kind of, you know, the greenery and the sort of the rolling hills. There's something very familiar about it.
And even more so, I mean, the photographs that you got weren't taken necessarily in the green season. I can see that. So
yeah.
In the low season, when people want to travel, or when we want people to travel there, it's going to look emerald. It's going to look like Ireland in summer, kind of, you know, in Scotland. It's just that emerald green that sticks out.
Absolutely beautiful. Next, we have Great Zimbabwe. Not to be confused with the Zimbabwe that wasn't quite as great, obviously.
I'll start this off and then I'll let Rue take over. But this is where Zimbabwe gets its name from, and it actually means house of stone.
Okay.
Now, when you click on and you get the pictures, this is it's one of the oldest structures in southern Africa that dates back to the 11th century. You know, they estimate, there's different guesses, but they estimate anywhere between 18,000, 25,000 people used to live in. It was the sort of the capital of an empire at that time, and you know, some of the artifacts there suggest that you know, they were trading with people as far away as China at this time.
No, really?
It's a pretty spectacular place, and you know, if you look at the brickwork and the stones that have been put together, there's no mortise, there's no cement that's put these stones together, and yet they're still standing and they're there. So it is definitely a place that, if you're in Zimbabwe, you got to go and see. It's just, that's where Zimbabwe gets its name from, as I said it before. But yeah, let me give you over to Rue.
Yes, I'm not going to elaborate much because of time, but they did survive. Their economic survival depended on cattle, crop cultivation, and they were exporting their gold through to the region. And like Warren said, it was a civilization that existed between the 11th and the 15th century. So yeah, interesting place.
Incredible how advanced they were in many ways.
Yes, if you're interested in archaeology and you haven't heard of this, or you want to learn more about it, I would suggest you learn. Great Zimbabwe. Also, very interesting on the Zimbabwe flag. I don't think we have a photo of the Zimbabwe flag, but the bird on the Zimbabwe flag. Yeah. That bird is, they found a lot of stone soap carvings. And the bird that's on the Zimbabwe flag is one of the examples of stone birds that they found in the Zimbabwe ruins. And the bird has become a kind of a cultural symbol of greatness, and that's why it takes its place on the national flag.
Oh, love that. Love that. It's fascinating to me, these you know, places like Great Zimbabwe, you know, Machu Picchu in Peru, and all of these kind of places, when you look at some of the building work, and you just think of then how long ago they were built, and you sometimes realize that, you know, some of these ancient civilizations were, you know, far more advanced, in some ways more advanced than we were, in terms of how sort of, you know, conscious they were of sustainability almost. And like you say, you know, this, I mean, it's an incredible example of dry stone walling. Effectively, you know, we have dry stone walling here. My you know, my uncle-in-law, he's a dry stone waller, and it's an incredible, you know, and I was thinking in my ignorance that with dry stone walls, you know, you basically just getting bricks and putting them on top of each other, or stones. But actually, you know, he talked me through at length that, you know, he said it's an absolute art form. You know, in order to have these structures and have them so that they can stand the test of time, trust me, it's an absolute art form. To see something on that scale that we're looking at there, I mean, that's just out of this world. I mean, that's huge, absolutely huge.
And the Europeans only confirmed the existence of Great Zimbabwe in the 19th century. So
wow, unbelievable. On to Gonarezu.
With Gonarezu, I mean, Gonarezu is a national park, and this is found in the southeastern section of the country. It's actually part of a transfrontier peace park that joins up with Kruger National Park in South Africa and Limpopo National Park in Mozambique. So it's a one massive area of land, but Gonarezu itself is 5,000 square kilometers large. And with Gonarezu, I actually want to add in two more other names, and that's called the I always get this name wrong, so excuse me. Malilangwe Game Reserve and the Save Valley. Now, these are two areas just north of Gonarezu on the Mozambican border. But this is, for me, it's the hidden gem. It's the diamond in the rough that, you know, it's quite far remote as well. Very difficult to get to in the past. It's being made a lot more frequently accessible now for people to get there. But this, to me, is probably my favorite. If I had to have a favorite, this would probably be my favorite part of Zimbabwe. Yeah. You know, it's if you head there, you're going to go through ever-changing ecosystems. You're going to go from flood thickets or floodplain thickets to sandfeld forest to wetlands. There's 3 major river systems that form natural shelters. Over 400 bird species, abundant wildlife, and massive tuskers, you know, big tuskers, and that's where the name actually Gonarezu comes from. It's called Wilderness of the Elephants. That's where the name comes from. So it's a place that, for me, I wish it'd be made more accessible in a way, but there's also a part of me that I want them to keep it inaccessible, because it is such a beautiful place. So yeah, scenically stunning, wilderness, wildlife. You got those massive big sandstone cliffs behind that elephant that you see there. It's probably one of the biggest breathtaking moments when you do see that. It's beautiful. It really is.
I think there's like 11,000 elephants.
Wow.
Something like that, yeah.
That's incredible. Again, you know, again, similar to when we were talking about the rhino before, but I can imagine, again, if you're walking through the bush and you come across a big tusker like that would be pretty humbling, all right. Again, stroke petrifying.
Yeah, that's
yeah, that would be scary. I think I might have told you on one of our previous episodes, the time when I was in Kruger, I was on the forgive me, Warren, you're going to go mad for me. What's the name of the small seat at the front of the Land Rover?
The tracker seat.
Not the spotter seat, the tracker seat.
Not the spotter seat, the tracker seat. Thank you. I was on the tracker seat, and yeah, we came up against a big tusker that was apparently on heat or something like that. Anyway, but it was. Oh, that's the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. You know, there's not many times when not many times in your life that you have it where your heart is going and you're at a stage where all of a sudden, if everyone will excuse my language, shit gets real. You know, that time in your life where all of a sudden everything is focused and it's like, maybe it's the fight or flight, but you just have that feeling of, oh my God, I feel like I could be close to death right now. Utterly petrifying, but then bizarrely really exhilarating. Once it was all over and we got away, there was something that made you feel so alive. That feeling of maybe it's the fight or flight. I don't know what it is. It's an experience that I haven't had many times in my life at all. But at the end of it, I just felt more alive than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Absolutely incredible. Have you had that, you guys? You must have it all the time, eh?
Yes, I've had it like Warren on the Zambezi River canoeing with a hippo popping up right next to you.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
When you face literally a 5-ton animal, some of them are 4, some of them are 6, but let's round it up to 5. A 5-ton animal, and it's big. It's, you know, they move exceptionally quickly, but I've got to say in the same breath that it's probably one of Africa's most gentlest animals.
Yeah.
It's the gentle giant. You know, animals like elephants, I get irritated when I hear people call them rogue and, you know, aggressive, and they're not. You know, they're sentient beings. We spoke about this in Botswana.
Yeah.
You know, they're sentient beings. They just, they watch you. If you're on foot with them and you're at a good sort of comfortable space, and they're just going to watch you. They're going to be as curious about you as you are to them. So, yeah, it is special though. Yeah,
it really is. And I guess that brings us up to, we couldn't mention Zimbabwe or do any kind of a mini tour of Zimbabwe, of course, without talking about Victoria Falls. Is there anything to say about Victoria Falls? I mean,
Are we done?
What do people need to know about Victoria Falls?
You know, for me, I think a lot has been said about Victoria Falls through a lot of media and a lot of press and, you know, news articles. But it's one of probably the greatest natural attractions possibly in the world. You know, if you look at the width of it, it's 1,700 meters. That's just over 1 mile in width long. You know, the highest point is 108 meters tall. Now, you just compare that to Niagara Falls, which is only 50 odd meters tall. So it's double the height of Niagara Falls. They say it's the world's largest. Now, there's 3 waterfalls in the world: Iguazu, Niagara, and Victoria Falls. That all get compared, and you can't really say. But when the floodwaters do come down, it's the largest single curtain of water that falls. And you know, for me, it's the best time there is in the low season, and that is not because I'm talking to you, Jed, right now. It really is. It's the low season when the water level is low. And I say that because you can actually see the falls. In the high water, there is so much water coming over.
Warren, just say that's October, November, December, when the water is very...
Yeah. So October, November, December, pushing up into even January, February, March, you know, the water level is low, and you can see the falls. The entire Zambian side. Now, Victoria Falls, if you're looking at the waterfall, literally 2/3 of it is Zambia, which we're going to talk about next week, and 1/3 is actually on the Zimbabwean side. So the Zambian side is completely dry most years. But the thing is, you can see the waterfall, you can see the bottom, you can see the gorge at the bottom. You really get to experience the immensity and the size of this waterfall and this crevice that's in the Earth's surface. So, you know, for me, it's phenomenal, and Victoria Falls has become known as the adventure capital of Africa. There's whitewater rafting to zip lining, bungee jumping. You know, they've got jet boats. There's canoeing on the Upper Zambezi. There's all sorts of wonderful adventure activities that you can do there. And there, you will never catch me doing that. But yeah,
no me.
It's a spectacular place, and also not far from Victoria Falls on the Zimbabwean side, you have Zambezi National Park, which is literally 5 kilometers upstream from the waterfall. Yeah. You know, so it's a spectacular place. For me, Victoria, named after Queen Victoria, David Livingstone named it after Queen Victoria. The original name is called Musi Otunya, which means the smoke that thunders. And literally it's because of all the spray that is being forced up into the air. And it's got this constant thunder and rumble about it.
Yeah, you can see the spray when it's at its peak, usually April, May, about 50 kilometers away.
Wow.
It's that high up. There's always these permanent water rainbows.
Yeah.
And both names, Victoria Falls and Mosi-oa-Tunya, the heritage, UNESCO heritage, World Heritage Site, they what do you call it? They've given both names the go-ahead. So we can call it Victoria Falls, even though it's got the connotation with, the colonial times.
Yeah.
And also, it's sometimes confusing, and because we're going to talk about Zambia next week, it's confusing for people. When you say Victoria Falls, it is the waterfall, but it's in the town is called Victoria Falls. So
Right.
in Zambia, it's in Livingstone when you cross that bridge. And of course, there's so much history to talk about in this part. Maybe we can add some of the history for next week, because Cecil John Rhodes, who we talked about earlier, he had this dream of creating a railway from the Cape to Cairo, and the Victoria Falls Bridge, which you have to cross to go from one country into the next, and where they do the bungee jump from. That was his vision. So it's a pretty spectacular site, and I do think Iguazu is pretty spectacular. I haven't seen Niagara. I think for me personally, Iguazu rivals Victoria Falls a little bit. But of course, being Southern African, I'm gonna always...
You have to plumb for Vic Falls. I think I haven't been to Vic Falls. I've been to Iguazu. I was fortunate. I've been a couple of times actually, with work, fam trips. We were saying before. So I have done, I've been to Iguazu Falls. What I find interesting is, it's a similar kind of a deal, though, isn't it? Where it's different countries that are sort of joining together. And I'm led to believe that now the crossing between Zimbabwe and Zambia, in terms of visas and everything else, it's all been facilitated now, so that when people travel to either Zambia or Zimbabwe at the Vic Falls side, they can cross freely between the two, right?
Yes. So what you do when you arrive at either of the ports, either Zambia or Zimbabwe, or Livingstone or Victoria Falls, you can inquire for a CASA visa, and you pay that, and that enables you to move freely between the two countries. It is something that you should know about. Your tour operators should inform you about it, because the government on either side won't necessarily give you or process that CASA visa, because of course it's revenue that they miss out on.
But that just on that note, Jed, things can also change very quickly, and they did implement it a few years back, and then they took it away suddenly. So no one really. So and then they've re-implemented again. It's just always good to chat to the experts on the ground.
Zambia's political issues, it's a very interesting thing to follow. But the Zambezi River, I don't know, we don't have much time, of course, and we can talk about this next week. But it is a fascinating journey that this massive river takes, where it has its source in the northern parts of Zambia, and it travels 2,700 kilometers east, and it has its mouth in the Indian Ocean. And of course, it's the fourth largest river in Africa, and there's so much economical use of this river for the local people that live in these regions. And we'll definitely talk about it next week as well, because it is part of the lower Zambezi and the escarpment of the Zambia.
There is something very exotic about the Zambezi as well. I think just the name just sort of evokes a certain exoticism to it. So I think we should definitely try and do a little bit of a focus on it next week when we talk about Zambia. We have got a question in from Rob Edmonds, who says, thanks so much, Roo, Warren and Jed. What do you see as the challenges for tourism for Zimbabwe in the future?
Well, I think the challenges that the country has had could be the same for the future, and that's political instability. we at the moment it's pretty okay. We, as you know, the dictator Robert Mugabe, he's been ousted, so that the country is going through a little bit of a renaissance. It's pretty affordable. Definitely not as expensive as Zimbabwe, as Botswana or East Africa. So to travel there is a bit more economical. What do you think?
Yeah, I think from a challenge perspective, I don't think there's any. I mean, other than what Drew said, I don't think there's any other challenges necessarily. But for me, more people need to sell it, and have faith in it. I think a lot of people get very nervous about sending people to Zimbabwe. I know a lot of people in the past have not wanted to support the regime that was controlling Zimbabwe, which is sad because you're disadvantaging the people on the ground at the end of the day, and to me that's not the right way to doing it. There's other ways. So for me it's travel. Honestly, travel there and let the government see that there's people coming and this is what we have to do. So. For me, if the more people that can actually travel to Zimbabwe and the more agents, operators, people around the world that can actually sell Zimbabwe, but sell it genuinely and not just Victoria Falls. And one of the reasons why we left Victoria Falls to the very end, because I think that's what most people think of when they think of Zimbabwe. There's so much more to this country, and it's even just spending time with the people at the end of the day.
And that is the people of Zimbabwe are yes, it is the warmest people. You would just fall in love with them. They are so magnificent.
Yeah, I love that. I think I read somewhere in the past week that just under 10% of Zimbabwe's GDP is derived from tourism, which means that tourism is really an important part of the economy of Zimbabwe. But I am always mindful that, and I'm not going to pick on my wife because she will be listening to this later on. But if I was to say to my wife, I want to bring yourself and the girls, my two daughters, to Zimbabwe, she would straight away, she'd scrunch up her face. Do you think that one of the challenges for not just Zimbabwe, but some of the other countries in Southern Africa, do you think there is a challenge with a bit of ignorance about, and I'm not saying my wife's ignorant, God, I have to be careful here. But, is there a bit of ignorance from, Europeans, possibly Americans, about what Southern Africa and the countries in Southern Africa is like? And do you think that that's something that holds us back? Because, really, when you look at all of this, and when I'm speaking to you, and I'm thinking, I go over in a heartbeat, but yet people for some reason aren't in huge numbers, and you have to think why. And I just wonder, is it ignorance? Is that what it is?
Absolutely, I agree. It is ignorance, and it's ignorance, but it's for me it's an ignorance that comes from, I think, mass media and bad news sells. None of the good stuff that comes out of any of these countries, I could guarantee you, doesn't get to your newspapers or your readerships. And it's just people don't know. So they see the bad things, they see all the negative. And this is unfortunately what we're having to constantly fight the whole time, is by saying, but no, this is really what it's like. Try and put the bad news aside. Every country's got bad news. Every country, if you had to look at it, has got negative connotations. And sadly, I think Africa primarily, more than any other continent, probably has the majority of it that gets put out there. I think this, and I might be wrong here, but people probably still see Africa as this big, dark, dangerous continent. It's do we travel there? Don't we? How do we? Is it safe to go? And I would happily I'll take my family to Zimbabwe tomorrow. If I could cross my border right now, I would go.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites to go on holiday. It's a phenomenal spot. But that's the thing. Africa, I think in general, has a pretty bad rap, and it's also seen as one large place instead of breaking it up in different sections, because it's so diverse. Yeah,
you're right though. Everybody just bundles it together and says, I wouldn't go to Africa like it's a country or something. It is a lot of ignorance, and I think that's something which, as a tourism industry, actually that's something that we have to do something about, and we have to make sure that we're more informed when we're speaking to clients as well, and make sure that they realize it. And hopefully in some small way, this kind of mini series can help hopefully alleviate this kind of fear or ignorance that people are feeling. So yeah,
I do think that the millennials, they are a little bit more adventurous in travel, in the way that they see travel, and I think we're going to see a change in Africa's tourism.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much for your kind comment there, Tash, and thank you for your question, Rob. That was very much appreciated. We've got another comment there from Paul. Thank you very much indeed, Paul, for your kind comments as well. That's really very much appreciated. Rue Warren, that's all we have time for. That was a really quick hour. Gosh, we've gone over our hour by 20 minutes. Luckily, no one's going to tell us off. I think we're okay. But thank you both so much for sharing your pearls of wisdom with us today on this beautiful country. Again, it's another one that's bang on my list, and I think that point at the end is a really valid point, that we collectively as a tourism industry, as well as travelers, we have a job to do to help educate people and help them to understand destinations like Zimbabwe, and also understand the role that their tourism plays in protecting the kind of national parks which we've seen here today on Zimbabwe. So that's all we've got time for. So thank you again so much to Africa Rome, of course, Rue and Warren. And really looking forward to next week's, where we're going to Zambia. Do you guys want to give us a little bit of a taster? What can we look forward to next week when we learn about Zambia?
Zambia, very quick and easy, hopefully just to whet the taste buds for those that are listening, and hopefully tune in next week. But for me personally, it's the most underrated safari destination in Africa. Oh wow! It's home of the walking safari. It has the world's largest mammal migration. So just think about that, world's largest mammal migration. Everyone's going to be thinking now wildebeest migration in East Africa, and that's not it. Yeah. It's just over 10 million fruit bats.
No.
Most people will go, bats, I don't want to see bats, but it is one of the most spectacular aerial displays you will ever see. It has spectacular cultural festivals. It has the second largest wildebeest migration in Africa of roughly 50,000 odd wildebeest. It has parks that can rival the Sabi Sands in the Kruger National Park, the private areas for leopard viewing. And just under 40% of the country's land is protected. So there's a lot to talk about, and I think we're going to probably run over our time next week again.
And it has the mighty Zambezi.
Of course, and we'll definitely make sure that we're going to talk a lot more about the Zambezi. I'm kind of really curious about the fruit bats, though. I'd love to see some footage of that. So I think that's either my challenge or your challenge, Warren, is to try and get some footage so that we can show people next week.
That's easy.
Yeah, okay, grand. I'll hold you to that. Brilliant stuff. Warren, Rue, thanks a million again. Wishing you a great day. I'm going to send you over to the green room now. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Jed. Have a good day.
Bye.
Cheers. So there we go. That is all we've got time for today. As we said, next week we are heading to Zambia. So that's on Monday, the 3rd of August. You can see all of the times there. We will, of course, share it out on social media a little bit nearer to the time. But that's it for us for this week. Thank you so much for your company this week. We've really enjoyed it and appreciated your questions and your comments. And again, feel free to keep them coming through on social media, and we'll make sure we answer as many as we possibly can. That's us for this week. Have a great week. See you next week.